Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasa Tato Jayamudhirayet Hare Krishna. Good morning. So first of all I would like to ask His Holiness Bhakti Bhushan Maharaj for his blessings. Dein Segen, dass ich sprechen darf. Hare Krishna. So English or German? Deutsch, English. Everybody speaks English? Ja, ne? Everybody speaks English. Okay. Achso, dann muss nur jemand. Übersetzt du, ja? Hier, nimm das deutsche Buch. Lass es gleich. Vielen Dank. Das ist ein wichtiger Service. Und wenn man übersetzt, ist man umso aufmerksamer beim Hören. So we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 18. Prithu Maharaj milks Earth planet, the Earth planet. Text 27. Yes. Yeah, 29 has a purport. So text 27. Evang Prithu Adayaham Prithvim Anadaha Svanam Atmanaha Doha Vatsadi Bhidhena Kshiram Bhedam Kurutvaha Evam Pritvadaya Prithvim Anada Svanam Atmanaha Doha Vatsadi Bhedena Kshira Bhedam Kurutvaha Evam Pritvadaya Prithvim Anada Svanam Atmanaha Doha Vatsadi Bhedena Kshira Bhedam Kurudvaha. Evam Pritvadaya Pritvim. Ladies. Word by word translation. Evam, thus, Pritvadayaham, King Prithu and others, Prithvim, the earth, Ana Adaha, all living entities desiring food, Suanam, their desired foodstuff, Atmanaha, for self-preservation, Doha, for milking, Vatsaadi, by calves, pots, and milkers, Bidhena, different, Kshira, milk, Bhedam, different, Kuru Uddavaha, Kuru Uttvaha, O chief of the Kurus. Translation and a little bit later purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. My dear Vidura, chief of the Kurus, in this way King Prithu and all the others who subsist on food created different types of calves and milked out their respective eatables. Thus they received their various foodstuffs, which were symbolized as milk. 28. Tato mahipati prita sarvakama duktam prituhu duhritve chakremam premna duhitri vatsalaham. Thereafter, King Prithu was very satisfied with the planet Earth, for she sufficiently supplied all food to various living entities. Thus he developed an affection for the planet Earth, just as if she were his own daughter. Text 29. Churnayam svadanushkotya girikutani rajarat bhumandalam idam vainyaha prajaschakre saman vibhuhu. After this, the king of all kings, Maharaj Prithu, leveled all rough places on the surface of the globe by breaking up the hills with the strength of his bow. By his grace, the surface of the globe almost became flat. Purport. Generally, the mountainous and hilly portions of the earth are made flat by the striking of thunderbolts. Generally, this is the business of King Indra for the heavenly planets, but But King Prithu, an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, did not wait for King Indra to break up the hills and mountains, but did so himself by using his strong bow. So there's only a few more verses, and then we'll finish the chapter. Text 30. Utasmin bhagavan vanya prajanyam vritidaha pita nivasam kalpayam chakre tatra tatra yatarhataham. To all the citizens of the state, King Prithu was as good as a father. Thus he was visibly engaged in giving them proper subsistence and proper employment for subsistence. After leaving the surface of the globe, he earmarked different places for residential quarters inasmuch as they were desirable. Graman putra pura patanani durgani vividhani cha gosham vrajam shibiri piran akaranketa karvatam. In this way, the king founded many types of villages, settlements, and towns, and built forts, residences for cowherdsmen, stables for the animals, and places for the royal camps, mining places, agricultural towns, and mountain villages. Text 32. Prakpritor iha naivasha pura grama dikalpana yata sukkam vasanti sma tatra tatra kuto bayaha. Before the reign of King Prithu, there was no planned arrangement for different cities, villages, pasturing grounds, etc. Everything was scattered and everyone constructed his residential quarters according to his own convenience. However, since King Prithu's plans were made for towns and villages. Purport. From this statement it appears that town and city planning is not new, but has been coming down since the time of King Prithu. In India, we can see regular planning methods evident in very old cities. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there are many descriptions of such ancient cities. Even 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna's capital, Dwarka, was well planned, and similar other cities, Mathura, Hastinapur, now New Delhi, were also well planned. Thus, the planning of cities and towns is not a modern innovation, but was existing in bygone ages. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 4th canto, 18th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Prithu Maharaj Milks the Earth Planet. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyanangyana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Namo Prabhupada Priyarasaya Jagannatha Yatrananda Murtaye Bhakta Sukaya Krishnat Kirtanena Nrsinghena Rakshitaya Namaha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll quickly read the verses again. My dear Vidura, chief of the Kurus, in this way King Prithu and all the others who subsist on food created different types of calves and milked out their respective eatables. Thus they received their various foodstuffs, which were symbolized as milk. Thereafter King Prithu was very satisfied with the planet Earth, for she sufficiently supplied all food to various living entities. Thus he developed an affection for the planet Earth, just as if she were his own daughter. After this, the king of all kings, Maharaj Prithu, leveled all rough places on the surface of the globe by breaking up the hills with the strength of his bow. By his grace, the surface of the globe almost became flat. To all the citizens of the state, King Prithu was as good as a father. Thus he was visibly engaged in giving them proper subsistence and proper employment for subsistence. After leveling the surface of the globe, he earmarked different places for residential quarters, inasmuch as they were desirable. In this way, the king founded many types of villages, settlements, and towns, and built forts, residences for cowherdsmen, stables for the animals, and places for the royal camps, mining places, agricultural towns, and mountain villages. Before the reign of King Prithu, there was no planned arrangement for different cities, villages, pasturing grounds, etc. Everything was scattered, and everyone constructed his residential quarters according to his own convenience. However, since King Prithu, plans were made for towns and villages. Hare Krishna. So I will focus more on the second part of these verses. The first two verses just summarize the main topic of the of this chapter. That Mother Earth, or Prithu Maharaj, was actually upset with Mother Earth because she was withholding her ability to feed the people. So Prithu Maharaj, as the king, in his duty to make sure the population has something to eat, actually went on a chase of Mother Earth, and more or less coerced her, to start giving milk, but not milk only in the form of milk in the form of all kinds of different produce that everybody needs for surviving. So symbolically, it's her milk. It says. I forgot what. There's some very interesting examples were there of all kinds of different living entities. Like, for example, the snakes, also got their poison as the milk, and so on and so forth. So all the living entities had now something to eat and survive from. And Mother Earth is similar like the Surabhi cow. We hear in the spiritual world there's Surabhi cows, or every cow is a Surabhi cow. But also within this world, we hear in different Puranas, also the Ramayana, that there are Surabhi cows. So if you're very lucky, you might have a Surabhi cow. And if you have a Surabhi cow, that's all you need. If you have a Surabhi cow, you don't need to go to Lidl or to Ikea or to anything, because Surabhi cow can provide anything and everything. In the story between Vishwamitra and Vashishta Muni, we hear in the Ramayana how the Surabhi cow was even able to manifest an entire army to protect the Brahmana. And of course, the Brahmanas mainly use the Surabhi cow to produce ghee, so they can perform fire ceremonies. So for fire ceremonies, we need a lot of ghee, and sometimes people wonder, it's like all this expensive butter. Now butter is also very expensive in Germany. So if you have a Surabhi cow, we are more concerned about the butter prices than the petrol prices in the temple, because the butter prices, are very relevant, the amounts of ghee we make. But now we have also our own milk, and we have already, I think, Brahmamsagora Prabhu showed me, I think, 16 kilos of our local own ghee, and this is very valuable. This is extremely valuable, and therefore also for the Nrsimha Chaturdasi Maha Abhishekam, I don't know after how many years we could do the full Abhishekam with only Ahimsa milk products from our own cows. And it's all the yogurt, all the milk, all the ghee we used in the Abhishek is from our own cows. Also, all the ghee we use for the Shalagram Shilas and to anoint the deity is our own ghee. The ghee we have to buy is only for the lamps, so that would be a little bit too expensive to burn the ghee, the precious ghee. But yes, so Mother Earth was just like a Surabhi cow, providing all the necessities for all living entities, and Prithu Maharaj was so pleased, it says here, that he accepted her, or he developed affection for her just as if she were his own daughter. And then I'll focus on the it's only a few verses, but it's one of very interesting aspects of Prithu Maharaja's rule. Prithu Maharaj is actually considered to be the acharya of deity worship. You know, each many different personalities are given the authority for one of the 9 paths of devotional service, and Prithu Maharaj is considered to be the authority in deity worship, and it's also described how he introduced, very elaborate deity worship. Here we also hear how he provided for all living entities, and after providing for food for everybody, it's described here how Prithu Maharaj standardized, villages, towns, So that's very, very interesting. Because currently now here in Simhachalam, we're trying to get the building permissions for a new guest house and for, some Grihastha building. But when you talk to the officials, they are very, they have very clear rules, and they say, yeah, we'll try to find a rule where somehow it could fit, but if you don't find the rule, you cannot build, and they have very strong rules that is not allowed to build anywhere outside, And next to the village or a city is more easy, but if you are in the countryside like we are here, you're not allowed to build just like that, So, so it's very interesting that basically Prithu Maharaj introduced this. Prithu Maharaj introduced this, planned arrangements, for different cities, and also it says here very clearly that before Prithu Maharaj, people used to construct according to their own convenience. Everything was scattered. Everybody constructed residential quarters, everywhere. So a little bit chaotic. And Prithu Maharaj developed a master plan, you could say, and he designated, here it says, different areas, for building different, different villages, settlements, towns, forts, cowherds, men's stables, royal camps, mining places, agricultural towns, and mountain villages. So this is very interesting because, and Prabhupada also mentions here in the purport, in India we can see regular planning methods evident in very old cities. So if you go to India nowadays, in most places you might think, everything is just chaos, and it is a lot of chaos there also. But if you go to the old cities, like there is Vijayanagara or Hampi in South India, or Jaipur also. Jaipur is relatively modern. It's only maybe 300 years, more or less. But yes, many areas in India actually had very elaborate planning. And you could say this is one of the main misunderstandings many Western people have towards India. When they see India nowadays, it's difficult to see the ancient cities, or the ancient glory. For us, it's a little bit different. I don't know if you ever had this experience, but when you read Srila Prabhupada's books, you start liking India. You start maybe even loving India. Because India is a unique place, and Prabhupada often refers to India. And then when you actually arrive in India, you're a little bit confused and surprised, because maybe it's very loud, very chaotic, very it seems a very at first sight, at first glance, a very horrible place, maybe even. But then if you spend some time there and go beyond the surface, then we can find all the treasures that Srila Prabhupada is talking about. So yes, so I wanted to focus a little bit on this topic. Basically, what Shishi Praladakshana Singari Bhagavan Ki Jai. Basically, we can say that the way we see India now, or like maybe not too long ago, is the worst situation India ever was, more or less. And the further you go into the past, the more you can actually recognize that India had very, amazing city planning. So on one, of course, example that many people will always quote, are many slums that exist in India and very bad hygienic situations. Very bad hygienic situations. And but if you go to Jaipur, you will find a city that was constructed in India only 300 years ago. A complete city. It's a completely planned city with straight alleys and market areas and everything is very organized. So the question is, where did this information come from? How did they manage to build Jaipur? And the story is that actually, when they built the city of Jaipur, the Maharajas of Jaipur, they basically, of course, built the city as the city for Govindaji. So Govindaji is the deity of Rupa Goswami, and in the center of the city you have the main palace of the king, and right as an extension of the palace, in the center of the city, we have the temple of Govindaji. So they were, devoted, Rajputs, and they had a strong connection to Vedic culture. So they got all their information and knowledge from Vedic texts. So they built the city according to the Shastras, how to build a city. So that's, very interesting. And if you go even further back, there is another city which was a few hundred years earlier in South India, Hampi. Somebody might have heard about Hampi. It's also a very unique place. That's the place where the Vanaras, around King Sugriva were staying. So the Ramayana. The story of the Ramayana is that Ram and Lakshman are searching for Sita, and until they meet Hanuman and Sugriva and all the Vanaras. And together, then they continue. They help, they assist Ram in finding Sita. So this place is called Hampi. It's a very unique place. And there, a very famous city was built, Vijayanagara. So this is only maybe 400, 500 years ago. And at that time, this was the wealthiest and most organized city on the planet, when this is only 500 years ago. And they had traders from all over the world going to this place. And, the city had many, many temples, many temples. Many still has, some of the, basically you could say that the main temples have survived, some of the palaces, but the city itself, was destroyed, in a war, some 100 years ago, 200-300 years ago as well. But this Jaipur and Vijayanagara are two examples that what Prabhupada is saying, that in very old cities you could see very elaborate city planning. So that certainly existed in India. And I'm always wondering if maybe Indians will somehow, re-tap into this ancient knowledge and start building cities, because they're building a lot. India is building is developing very fast now. But mainly they're copying the West, in the way they construct high-risers and buildings and shopping malls and whatnot, or metros. But ancient planned cities are very aesthetic. Means they're very beautiful, they're very pleasing, and of course they have also always a spiritual dimension. All the cities have temples. So maybe India will be inspired by King Prithu and build some nice cities also, not only shopping malls, which only the rich can access. And of course, Srila Prabhupada here is also talking about Dwarka, Mathura, and Hastinapur, which are three ancient cities we hear about in the Bhagavatam. But in between those cities, you could say there are some other areas in India, which is now in the area where we have Gujarat or Rajasthan, and also what's nowadays Pakistan. And there you can find very, very ancient cities, more or less of the same time as Mathura, Hastinapur. And the cities have perfect drainage system, Each house has a, water supply, drainage system, and, there's a common bath area, there's a temple. So, and this is, a few thousand years old, But, of course, the descriptions we have in detail, how they were alive and living, are of Dwarka, Mathura, and Hastinapur. So we can start with Dwarka. If you read in the Bhagavatam, in the 10th canto, and also in the 1st canto, there's a few descriptions of Dwarka. So Dwarka had, because Krishna was there, had 16,108 palaces, just for Krishna and his queens, And I forgot the exact description, but it's described how they were arranged. They were arranged in a certain pattern. And we hear in the Bhagavatam how Krishna, Narada Muni, is traveling through Dwarka, and he's astonished how Krishna is doing something else in every different palace. One palace is playing chess, one palace is playing with his children, and so on and so forth. And whenever Krishna goes to the assembly, of Dwarka, from 16,108 palaces, 16,108 Krishnas emerge, and they merge into one Krishna, who then walks to the assembly hall. And after the assembly meeting is over, he comes out of the assembly and then again splits, and then enters back into his palaces. So, yeah, and Srila Prabhupada's, in the Krishna book also, how you say, glorifies, Dwarka, because Krishna had with each of his queens 10 children, isn't it right? Boys, yeah, 10 boys, 10 boys, 10 boys with each of his queens, and then each of his sons also had 10 children, right? So just the population of Krishna's family, was immense, And then, all of the other, great warriors of the Yadava dynasty and rulers. So Dwarka is described, as a very beautiful city, which had parks, and at each intersection is described. Each intersection, when two roads would cross, there was always a temple, at this intersection. And this you can also see in Jaipur, like at the main intersections, like at the four corners of the intersection, there's temples, And not only that, at the intersection there was always temples, where always incense, or fragrant, smokes were burning, and there were lakes, ponds, artificial ponds with lotuses. So that means, a lot of, not just some grass patch, but some flowers, but a lotus pond in the middle of the city, and that at every intersection. And also in the Bhagavatam we hear that Dwarka was made of different materials. I forgot all the details, unfortunately, but it describes, these buildings were made of, white stone, the roads were made of red stone, and different arches were decorated with, with precious stones also. And this is also known that nowadays you won't find that in India anymore, but if you read a little bit the history of India, many of the plunderers who came, they were surprised, how the temples were covered, with precious stones. It means all the murtis and deities, also like on the outer walls of the temple, had eyes and different, precious stones inlaid in the statues. So when invaders came, they would just, chip, they would chip away the precious stones. Then we have the example of Mathura. So Mathura and Dwarka are of course related. First Krishna was in Mathura, and then Krishna left Mathura, to protect his family because of the regular attacks of Jarasandha. No? Jarasandha was always attacking, Mathura. And but Mathura is also described as a very, elaborate, amazing city. And I don't know, maybe some of you have been to Mathura, if you've ever been to Mathura. It's not too far from Vrindavan. And Mathura now has a few buildings, and a few ancient temples, but in general you don't see a big ancient city anymore nowadays. But in Mathura there are museums, so if you go to some of the museums in Mathura, there you will find, that Mathura was incredible. It had like all these ancient pillar ways and ancient temples. Especially there used to be this ancient Keshava temple. And when Srila Prabhupada first arrived in India in 1972 with his disciples, many of the Hindu leaders said, Prabhupada, you have to help us, we have to rebuild the Keshava temple. So the Keshava temple was the temple that was at the birth site of Krishna. So the birthplace of Krishna used to be a grand, beautiful, very tall, Keshava temple. And many ancient travelers from Greece or from China also, they described Mathura, as a very, sophisticated, very sophisticated, beautiful city, very organized city. And of course, time, destruction, everything happens. And nowadays, you don't see so much of it in Mathura, but it's actually there. And then another example is Hastinapur, which Prabhupada is saying here. And that's, of course, New Delhi. And Delhi is sometimes considered to be the city with most reincarnations, Since ancient times, Delhi was the capital of India. And there are so many times a new city was built, on the old city or next to it, And so yes, in Hastinapur or Indraprastha, you've heard of Indraprastha? Indraprastha, this was the capital the Pandavas had, And technically, Indraprastha and Hastinapur were like sister cities, The Pandavas were in Indraprastha and the Kurus, led by Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana were in Hastinapur. But sometimes they're considered to just have been very close to each other. But yeah, if you read the Mahabharata, it seems that Indraprastha was actually much further away. Basically, Duryodhana gave to the Pandavas an area of the kingdom which was not very useful. So, of course, Duryodhana always tried to take away the position, property, or rights of the Pandavas. And when he was convinced that he should share his kingdom, he said, okay, I'll give some part of it, And they gave the Pandavas, the most desolate area, which swamps and very few people and thieves, And so, and the Pandavas, took this area and developed Indraprastha, a very amazing city, which was built by Vishvakarma, and also the main palace was built by Mayadhanava. So if you read the description of the city, also it's very clear, an amazingly, organized, planned, extraordinary, beautiful city. Yes, so we can trace this, planning back to Prabhu, Prithu Maharaj, and there is some very interesting theories, around city planning, because we live in Germany and we have very good city planning also. Everything is very regulated, There are norms for, the size of each sidewalk, the height of the Bordsteinkante, and the angle in which it goes down, and the material that it can be, and, everything like that. But what many people don't know is that this entire system which we have in Germany comes from the Romans. Before, Germany was a quite wild place. The Romans called it the barbarians. The Germans were barbarians, and they had villages, and they used to live in as tribes, in the forests. So the Romans brought this system, and it remained in Germany very alive. Where in many other parts of the Roman Empire it completely disappeared. this system of building cities remained very alive in Germany. And the Romans, where did the Romans get their city planning from? Or architecture? Nobody knows? From Greece, of course. So the Romans, they love Greece. Greece was like the ultimate inspiration for the Romans, and the Romans developed their own methods, but basically everything the Romans did and appreciated was Greek. So, and what is the connection between Greece and India? Yes, maybe there's a few, but maybe somebody heard. Yes.
I forgot. There was one part of the Vedic culture, like one race given in the scriptures, which then became the Greek, but I don't know the name of this race.
Yeah, so basically Yavanas, Yes, so they worship Zeus, which has a thunderbolt, basically Indra, So the similarities between Greek culture and Vedic culture are very, very obvious, very obvious. There are many, many parallels. And it's also known that there was a lot of exchange between Greece and India, ancient India. There is, for example, even the first Western Vaishnava was a Greek, I forgot his name, I think Heracles or something like that. Somebody knows? Very famous Greek. He was like a emissary from the Greek kingdom in India, in Pataliputra or Patna, and he became a Vaishnava. So he developed this Helios pillar. So he put this pillar, very famous pillar, where he writes in Greek and in Sanskrit, I am a devotee of Vasudeva, and explains how he became a devotee of Vasudeva, basically. And what we have nowadays in Afghanistan, Afghanistan used to be like a mixture, a mixture of Greek and Vedic culture. They called it Bactrian Empire, and there you had many deities which look like Greek, Greek style of architecture or sculptures, but they were deities of Vasudeva, of Shankarshan or Balaram, and also other demigods like Ganesha. Very beautiful, but Greek style, Greek style statues. So yes, there is a strong connection between Greece and India, and there's always the discussion who inspired who. Did the Greece inspired Indian astrology and astronomy, or did the Greek got inspired by Indian astronomy and astrology, and so on and so forth. So the connection which I'm trying to make is that Prabhupada is saying that from this statement it appears that town and city planning is not new, but has been coming down since the time of Prithu Maharaj, King Prithu. So Prithu Maharaj lived many, many years ago, in a different era. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that city planning has been coming down from Prithu Maharaj, since then. And you can make a connection also historically, how there is a connection between city planning nowadays in Germany. It was inspired by the Romans were inspired by the Greeks, the Greek had a strong connection with India. So city planning in Germany is thanks to Prithu Maharaj. And now we have problems, because they don't allow us to build as we want. But in sense, it's good actually, because of course the idea is that they don't want anybody to, just otherwise everybody would, fill up the entire landscape with, any buildings, But of course they should make an exception for the temple, So we're trying to convince them that we are a very important touristic spot, and this is always convincing for them because tourism is very important for the region. So probably with tourism we can convince them to give us permission to build something. But Param Shri and Shivatma Prabhus, they also talked a lot about this topic from a slightly different angle, because we have, of course, in ISKCON the Krishna West, you could say, development, or Krishna West ideas, that we live in the West, so we should be Krishna West, And if you look at the logo from Krishna West, the logo of Krishna West? It's a Greek temple, with a flute of Krishna in front, Krishna West, So basically what Paramshaya Prabhu always used to point out is like, my feeling is that in Germany we have more Vedic culture than in India, the way people behave, the way people follow the norms and rules, and everything is organized and clean. This is Vedic culture, he said. If you read Vedic culture, Vedic tradition means, it's organized, people follow the rules and regulations, and there's harmony, And he said, if I go to India, I don't see Vedic culture. I just see chaos, people, fighting, nobody follows the line, everything is dirty, and, so there's no Vedic culture in India. So that's one of the main, you could say, reasons why Krishna West became predominant, or is predominant to some extent. Always has been a little bit here and there. Because they feel that, the way India is now, it's not very civilized, the West is more civilized. So if you try to convince Western people to become Indians, it will not work, Because Western people will say, I'm good, I don't need this, Indian style life, maybe. I think if we look at the whole picture, we can understand that actually there is a connection. Prabhupada very often talks about how Vedic culture used to exist all over the world, or Vedic culture had an influence all over the world, So yes, it's true. There are many aspects of Vedic, for example, city planning, that are very alive in Germany and not so alive in India. Very, very obvious. And therefore, I think many people hope that India, will take up some of the, inspiration from Prithu Maharaj and develop good cities, Because basically Prithu Maharaj was it says here, like a father, providing for all the citizens, So he organized, that everybody had all the requirements met, and that's the duty of the state. The duty of the kshatriya is to provide, proper arrangements, accommodation, means for subsistence, basically engagement. One of the duties of the kshatriya is to make sure all the varnas are engaged according to their abilities and capabilities. And yes, so this is of course, a huge task, India is a big, big country. But if India manages to do something like that, then the whole rest of the world will look, because India is right now still in not such a good condition. My feeling is that India is developing the right direction. They're taking more and more inspiration from Vedic culture, Vedic tradition. Before they were a little bit shy, and they didn't. They're trying to be secular, trying to be socialists. But actually, ancient India has so much to offer. The Vedic tradition, and if it's city planning or also I'm reading currently the Arthashastra. Somebody knows Arthashastra is from Chanakya, Kautilya. It's a very interesting book about how a city in ancient India, or how a government was run in ancient India, and it's incredible. They had so many, maybe sometimes a little bit scary even, how much organization and control they had. So, for example, there's a whole list of fines, if you offend somebody, If you offend somebody, according to different levels, a different level of punishment will be there by paying, like a fine, And so, but it also reflects that the society was a highly respectful society. Means even, insulting somebody was already like a, fine you had to pay for, So, yes. Okay, I think I'll stop here. Maybe there are some questions, comments. Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Maharaj Prithu ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. question? Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for the nice lecture. It was very interesting. I was thinking now on the end, maybe we could go to the employment or government for the permission and tell them a part of the story that we have in our scriptures, who created all these rules. Maybe it would be interesting for them which kind of topics we have in our scriptures.
Maybe, yeah. We have to write now like a whole master plan and send it to them. You know, what we're doing, what's happening here, because they're confused who we are. They say, who are you? What are you doing? You know, you're a farm, you're a guest house, you're a temple, you're a tourist place. So what are you? You know, it's like so many. And there's like, how many people live there? They asked us, and it's like around 30 people, and you still need more space for like 30 people can easily do everything. It's like, yeah, but we have many, not only agriculture guest houses, we have many other things also going on. So sometimes for them it's difficult to understand, you know. It's like, why do you need more space for living, you know? Like everybody, with 30 people you could do everything, you know. And then the man even said like his mother used to run his guest house by herself, you know. Construction, new guest house. Guest house. New guest house and also new grihasta building and administration building would also be good. So we have some offices for the devotees, some office space. Yeah. Because the yoga room is doing everything. The yoga room is children room, prasadam room, seminar room, and kitchen, music lesson room. So yeah, we need more space. And yeah, if we explain it properly, and maybe we can mention something like this, yeah. It's a good idea. Yep.
Just a short question. The Govindaji temple was actually has 7 floors. Am I right? And 3 or 4 of them were destroyed by the Muslims, right? Is that temple? Huh?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah. So Keshava temple is completely destroyed. There's nothing there anymore. So when you go to the birthplace of Krishna, there's like a new temple next to the mosque, and you can go under the mosque, like on the side, and that's considered to be like the place where Krishna was born, because Krishna was born in a kerka, in a prison cell. And the Govindaji temple is in Vrindavan. Keshava temple was in Mathura, and the Govindaji temple was in Vrindavan. Govindaji temple is much more recent, you know, after Rupa Goswami it was built. Whereas the Keshava temple is very ancient, like hundreds and hundreds of years old. And the Govindaji temple, we have a picture of it, like a reconstruction on the painting of Vrindavan skyline here. And it's described that the Govindaji temple had a flame, you know, on the top. Always a flame was burning at the top, or at regular festivals, you know, a flame was burning at the top of the Govindaji temple. And Aurangzeb saw this from Agra, you know. It's like, what is this, you know, light higher than my palace, you know. So he didn't like it, so he sent somebody to destroy it. You know? So they destroyed the upper 4 stories. 3 are left. 3 are left, and the devotees got information on time, so Govindaji was traveling many years, probably I think 25 or 26 years, you know, until it reached Jaipur. It was a long time in Radhakund and different areas it was hiding before it reached Jaipur. Yes. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Shri Prabhupada Lakshmi Singh Bhagwan ki jai.